Good
So
morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're a couple minutes early. We're going to start at about 11:02, so just give us a few minutes and we'll start the presentation. You guys, sorry, we can't, unfortunately, we're not able to interact with you. If you want to send an emoticon along, we're here to giggle at them.
Quiet start. That's all right. It's all good. We'll get it revved up.
Can everybody hear us right now?
Yeah.
You're on.
All right, good. Hey, everybody.
Bruce, you have like a radio voice.
I have a face for radio. What did you say?
No.
Oh,
Gosh. All right, we still have to wait a minute or two. People are joining. Thank you guys for joining. We're going to start in just a few minutes. We are unable to interact with you, so you'll just have to hang out and look at us for a little bit. All right, everyone. I don't want to have this go too long, so good morning. Thank you guys so much for joining. My name is Kristen Koenig. I'm a consultant over here at Harbor Networks. I just want to take a minute to note a few things before we get started. As I mentioned, unfortunately, we're unable to interact with you guys. Mics and cameras are turned off, but if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see a smiley face. If everyone could just go ahead and send an emoticon along so that we know you can hear and see us, that would be great. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Absolutely feel free to keep those coming throughout the presentation so we know you're still with us. And next to that smiley face, you'll see a box with a question mark. This is where you'll submit all your questions and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation. If for some reason we don't get to them, we'll absolutely reach out to you after. We know this is an important topic. We want to get everything covered. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a couple questions survey that'll pop up on your screen as soon as it's over. We'd appreciate your feedback on that as well. This and all of our other webinars are posted on our website at harbornetworks.com under the tab, so feel free to take a look at those as well. Last but not least, we're doing a giveaway at the end. You must be on the webinar to receive it. We'll go through, do the wheel of names and pick one at random. And now that logistics are out of the way, I'd like to introduce Bruce Cheney, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer from Arctic Wolf, and John Flory, CISO at Harbor Networks. Take it away, guys. I'll be back at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. Again, awesome. Great job. This is our last webinar of the season. Then we're going to be taking the summer off. And I think we've done 8 or 9. And Kristen's been awesome. She's the one in the background putting all this together, organizing us, programming Bruce and myself. So it's fantastic. And Bruce, maybe say hi, and then I'll kick it off after you introduce yourself.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Like Kristen said, I'm Bruce Cheney, a senior pre-sales engineer with Arctic Wolf. Before I started working at Arctic Wolf, I was working as a pen tester, doing vulnerability assessments, breaking into businesses, helping them understand how the bad guys would get in. And then prior to that, I had years of consulting for New York State as a Windows, Microsoft Exchange subject matter expert, and really providing, security solutions throughout the entire landscape for New York State. Okay.
Yeah, great. So it's great. So I had an opportunity to work with Bruce for several years when he was doing the pen testing. We were kind of side by side there for several years, and he's one of the best I've ever seen by far. So it's awesome to have him here because he's going to be able to give us a real inside look of, hey, what do you look for? What are these criminals seeing? What's out there? How are they doing it? How easy or hard is it? So we're going to really give you that look. it's interesting because the dark web, it's thought of as so evil, and a lot of times it is, and that's what we're really going to be talking about today. It wasn't built for that, right? It was built for the military. It was built for covert communications. But what happened was, so what it is it's a way to go to different websites anonymously. It's a way to go there, and you could do it anonymously. So that's the big difference. And what happened was cryptocurrency came out. And once you coupled an anonymous way to go someplace and then an anonymous way to transact, it made it what it's thought of today in many ways. And that's a place where criminals and thieves and organizations with bad intentions are going, right? And they're going to get our information so they can steal from us. It's not all bad, though. There are different things, like think about activist groups for good. They might be able to use the dark web. Law enforcement, there are oppressive regimes throughout the world where they suppress and you can't get information. So maybe that's a tool for people in those areas to be able to be educated, and journalists. So there are some good ways you can use the dark web. But today we're going to really talk about how the criminals are using it to take our money. I'm an incident responder. I spend my days helping people that are going through incidents. And the incidents are ramped up. And in the end, it's still a majority phishing. And we're seeing a lot of mailbox takeovers. We're seeing a lot of things that the dark web is a clear path to. So people are password fatigued. We've talked about this on other webinars. They're just passworded out. So they're using the passwords they can remember, which is probably their work password, on all these different sites. So we're going to talk about what happens when they do this. And then we're going to talk about some things you can do to help, right? How can we shield ourselves from these criminals? How can we become more safe than we are now? Do our due diligence, right? Be defensible if we are in some type of leadership role with other people's information, etc. With that said, Bruce, kick us off. Get us rolling.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, John. Yeah, like John said, him and I have been doing this this kind of stuff for years. So this is great to be here to talk about this stuff. And I think you'll see as we go through the the passion and the drive to help everybody understand what this stuff really looks like. I think is super critical when you want to start looking at how to protect your networks, right? I mean, the bad guys get in, they're beating all of our tools, whatever, when we think of, anything that's going on, Colonial Pipeline or whatever, right? Our tools are being beat, our people are being beat, and they're getting in. And, what does that look like? A lot of places say, oh, we have backup, so we'll be okay. But they're going above and beyond now with extortion, along with your data theft, and trying to sell your data in addition to the ransomware. So the whole point of this presentation, when we sat down to try to figure out what could we do, was just to help you guys understand, when you hear things on the news and you hear things, you see things on the web and stuff, what does it actually mean? Their data was leaked to the dark web. What does that look like? So throughout today, what we're going to talk about is, we'll just start out with the current threat landscape. We'll talk about breaches, and then the dark web. We'll take a little deep dive into, kind of spin off of what John was saying about the deep web and the dark web and how it ties in and how you get there and whatnot. And then, we can talk about an operational approach to trying to, to help, remediate or prevent these types of things from happening. So, just to talk about, the current threat landscape and what's in the news. Recently, we saw Universal Health Services, right? So this, nationwide company, 400 facilities were attacked during the night. Texas, Arizona, California, Florida, 4 people died related to this attack, right? So this is the first time that, we've seen cybercrime, here in the United States lead to the death of people, right? And that was because systems were down, patients had to be rerouted. And then during that rerouting, it was just the timing didn't work out properly. And like I said, 4 people ended up dying for that. So, just really the worst type of risk that, that you can look at is when people are dying. We also had Travelex recently, right? So these guys had their web systems were taken offline for weeks. Retail shops were shut down. They ended up paying 2.3 million in Bitcoin, but they never recovered from it. So even though they tried to pay to get the key to unlock their data, they've now filed for bankruptcy at the end of 2020. And, the business has ended, right? And again, they had all the tools in place. They probably, just didn't have the people in the processes. They didn't have the operational piece of it to watch for the alerts, to watch for the anomalies, to, comb through all of the alerts and notify the proper people when things were going on. And then, of course, we've had Colonial Pipeline. They paid the 4.4 million in Bitcoin and recovered 2.1 million in Bitcoin back. That's arguable. It's still going to cost tens of millions of dollars to be able to restore, all the compromised systems and kind of get that, that public trust back. That ended up being a password issue, right? And then we had the JBS meat packing recently, where the bad guys went after that. So watched a thing with Krebs where he talked about, there's no boundaries for these guys, these bad guys, these Indrik spiders, these Russian cybercrime groups, the North Koreans, the Chinese, the Iranians, and now even the Cubans are involved in this ransomware game, and they have no boundaries. They're attacking, and to quote Krebs, they went after our gas, they went after our hot dogs. Nothing is out of bounds for them, right? Yeah. So we need to make sure that regardless of what the industry is, the risk is actually there.
So Bruce, this is what I found to be fascinating about Colonial Pipeline, and I want to talk to you about it. And yeah, it ended up being a password problem, and that could have been prevented, but it happened. And then they paid the ransom. And then the federal agencies, the FBI, were able to go in and get some of the ransom back. So there's a lot of arms and legs there, right? But this is what pops into my mind when I think about that. The power of ransomware has been the ability to transact anonymously, right? So I'm not going to get caught. I'm going to get this money, and that's the power of it. So with Colonial, since the FBI went in and got that money back, they knew who it was, they knew where it was, and it wasn't anonymous. So is this could this be a paradigm shift? Is it really anonymous now that it's been cracked?
So what happened was, with the seizing of this Bitcoin, is the group that did this dark side group is what we call ransomware as a service. So they are the company that delivers the ransomware, right? And a different organization will break in. So you would have somebody, maybe like say an Indrik spider or something like that would actually breach the network, right? They would get the credentials, they would get in, they would get the user to open the attachment, they would get the user to click the phishing email and type their credentials, right? And then they would break in and get command and control over the network. And then at that point, they contract out to DarkSide to just slide in now and deliver the ransomware, go through that exercise. And when it's all said and done, DarkSide delivers 60% of it back to the hackers, and they keep the 40% for themselves. So what was recovered was not the dark side's piece of it, but with the piece for the actual hackers, right? So it was set to, and because they were able to track the Bitcoin wallet, they were able to go in and seize it because Bitcoin uses the blockchain and it's a public ledger. You could see where it was, and however they found it, but I don't think it's any deterrence. It's more interesting that we saw DarkSide say, hey, we're going to step by back. DarkSide also reported that this Bitcoin happened, the seize happened 10 days before the United States said that we did this. Right. So they had said, hey, we're stepping away. To me, it looked like it was just an exit strategy. They seized all of our Bitcoin. We're stepping away. Sorry, everybody, that we didn't get to pay. They kept it. They resurface now, as a different group. Avedon is another group that just did this, where they actually provided 2,600 keys to bleepingcomputer.com saying we're out of the game. Here's 2,600 keys. That's 2,600 companies that at that point in time last week were under a ransomware attack. And these guys just provided the keys and said they're walking away. So, maybe our law enforcement and legal efforts are starting to work, but I think it's still way too early to actually, say that that's a true statement. The Russians have.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
They have that protection. Putin's not turning anybody over to us, right? We know, who these people are in some cases. Interpol has put warrants out for their arrest, and we're just not getting any cooperation from some of these countries. Other countries, work with us and help us, but
so maybe we don't cooperate with these non-extradition actors, right? Maybe that's what this is, hey, okay, you don't want to cooperate, we'll go in and take it. But yeah, all right, let's move on. Current threat landscape. I love this topic.
Yeah, so this is, just really helps us understand what's going on. $18.8 billion in ransomware costs just in 2020 alone. All right. So from 74% increase in 2019, that's a 485% increase in 2020. And this is not slowing down, right? The bad guys are just getting more and more greedy. We're seeing business email compromises cost businesses $1.8 billion in 2020. And 65% of businesses saw these types of attacks, right? These are the ones where, hey, I need you to, at a very low level example, hey, it's me, the CEO of the company. I need you to keep hush on this, and I need you to go out and buy me these 10 gift cards so that I can surprise these employees tomorrow at the party, and then just do me a favor, buy them, I'll pay you back later, and send them over here to this address, right? And it's not the president of the company, it's not their real email address, but it might look like it. It might be they might even say, hey, I'm using my Gmail account so that nobody knows we're doing this, right? And at a worst case for the business email compromise, it's $700 million transfers, between companies.
Yeah, mailbox takeover, right? They could take over that mailbox because they found the password on the dark web and they didn't have multi-factor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And once they have that mailbox, so whether it's a phishing type of an attempt to get the wire transfer, or like John said, the worst kind, that mailbox takeover, where now they have your mailbox and they're sending email as you to people who would have absolutely no reason to not trust, the source of that. Another big problem we're seeing is 206 days is our dwell time. So the mean time to detect and identify is increasing. So more than about 7 months, bad guys get in, they roam around the network, they footprint it, they figure out where everything is, they slowly exfiltrate data out. And then when they're ready, they bring the ransomware in, you get encrypted. The bad guys demand the ransom to decrypt you, but also now we're seeing this weaponization of your data where they're now going to post it publicly unless you pay.
Yeah. Go. Keep
going. So the history of this was, hey, you've got ransomware and you have to pay us. And okay. And oh, well, you know what? We have backups. So we're not going to pay. We're going to restore from backups and rebuild a little bit. Bad guys see that. So they say, oh, okay, now we're going to encrypt your backups. So now you're still going to have to pay us because you don't, and we're going to delete the backups after we encrypt them. So now you're going to have to pay. Oh, so now we're going to air gap backups, right? So now there's no connection on the network for these backups. So now the bad guys say, okay, you don't want to pay. So now they steal all the data. They just take their time, they get it out. And now if you don't want to pay the ransom, they go and post it publicly, right? And then that creates, a whole series of issues, from employee social security numbers, corporate secrets, tax information. Imagine your business and every piece of information that you have is taken and becomes publicly available. And sadly, what the bad guys do is they will post 5 to 10 documents from your network to let you know, number one, that they do have your data, and number two, that they mean business, because the stuff that they choose to post is usually very, very, very sensitive. And in a couple of minutes, I'll show you, some images from the dark web and some of these data leaks and what it actually looks like.
Yeah, and Bruce hit it right on the head, right? Pre-COVID attack, I'll say. They encrypt you. If you have good hygiene, you don't have to pay. It might be a little painful. New attack is they methodically take your data. They come in at 2 o'clock for 10 minutes, take a little bit. They're doing it. They've just refined the way they're doing it, and they're taking their time. And so by the time they encrypt you now, they have all your data. And then it's a business decisions. I've been a part of a lot of these, and we've gotten the FBI involved in what the FBI will say. So they have these 5 documents, like Bruce said. Hey, here's your CRM. Here's your balance sheet. Here's your whatever it might be, right? So they'll give you a look at it, and then the FBI will say 2 things generally: revert to your incident response plan, and secondly is it's a business decision, right? So they have your CRM. If your CRM, then they'll say we're going to go at Thursday at 5 o'clock. Next Thursday at 5 o'clock, we're going to release this to every nationwide news outlet or whatever is applicable, right, to the business. And then so the business has to say, okay, who are we dealing with? So that's where the forensics comes in. We have to understand, are these bad actors reputable? In other words, is their reputation that if they say they're going to leak the data, they do, right? If they say they're going to give you back the keys, do they give it? So all this reconnaissance is being done on the back end. So we have to understand who we're dealing with, what their reputation is, and now they're being spoofed and they're being knocked off, and all this is happening, deep fakes in this, right? But who are they? And then, okay, if our balance sheet gets out there, if our CM gets out there, what's it worth to us? And then these are the decisions that are being made, and the amount of people that are paying ransoms right now, today, is alarming. It's alarming because they're being extorted, and it's minimally buying them time. It's a terrible, awful spot we're at right now. That's why we need to understand if someone's coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning and taking our data while we're sleeping, because they know we're sleeping. They're that smart, right? Okay, Bruce.
No, yeah, and just to circle back to that FBI comment, even though the FBI says, oh, you shouldn't pay the bad guys, don't pay the ransom, they very well know that, there's a lot of companies that aren't even reporting this and just going and paying. And then the companies that do report it and still pay. So it becomes important to bring the FBI in because, like John said, they know they're tracking these global adversaries on a daily basis. And they know that, oh, if this is, our evil, or if this is Avedon or DarkSide, they know, okay, if you pay them, yes, they're going to give you the keys and they're going to delete your data. But they also know the percentage of the data that you would get back. So they might say, oh yeah, these guys,
Right.
Like the Cuban
Right.
cybercrime, yeah, it wouldn't pay them because chances are you're only going to end up getting 20% of your data back anyway. And they have a reputation for just selling it, off. So even though you might think the FBI doesn't want us to pay, you probably should notify them anyway and at least bring them in. They'll give you, a much higher oversight as to what's really going on. And here in the Northeast, we're in trouble, right? So, looking at this is from the FBI 2020 Internet Crimes Report, and New York State, Jersey, Pennsylvania, this whole area up here, we're in the top. So the top 10 states by the number of victims. New York just last year alone saw almost 40,000 cybercrime victims. Okay, so this is your extortion, your ransomware, your business email compromises. I mean, yes, we're a large state, but we're a target, right? So, if you look at healthcare, for instance, New York State healthcare, has been hit harder than any other state, right? Because they know we have more hospitals here. They know that they're more connected. They, and they're able, these guys are smart, right? These are full-time jobs by these adversaries. And if they don't get us, they go hungry. Their families go hungry. So it's in all of their interest to pick the best targets, where the most money is, and try to leverage those. When we look at it by loss, New York State is almost at $500 million last year, just in these cybercrime, incidents alone, right? So it's no joke. And again, to go back to what Krebs was saying about, the gas and the hot dogs, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's opportunistic. Sometimes it's targeted, and by opportunistic, I mean you've got a business email compromise. They see that you're communicating with this insurance agent, so they now attack that insurance company under the guise of being you, sending attachments into somebody where they could get command and control. When we look at it by industry, it's, if you were to go back a couple, 3 or 4 years, it would be financial institutes at the top, and then everything else would be very, very small. Yeah. Now it doesn't. This goes back to it doesn't matter, right? I mean, everybody's being attacked, across the board, and money wise, the bad guys are smart. They know, that sometimes public places, cities, small towns and things like that, they don't have enough money. They don't have a lot of money and they can't pay, $20 million. And then they know these big healthcare companies, energy companies, financial companies, can pay big money. So they, look to get, more from them. But even though, regardless of what you're paying, to the bad guys in the Bitcoin, the cost to the business itself, could be lights out, in the long run.
And they know, Bruce. So I've just been a part of a 3 in a row that these were companies that were owned by like entrepreneurs. They found out in the bank, they got their bank accounts and understood what they could afford. So They didn't go out, but they would get paid. It was crazy.
Yep. Yeah, we've seen them attack cyber carriers.
Yeah.
Go after the cyber carrier and get a list of all of the companies that are being covered. And now they have a list of targets that they can go after that they know have insurance. And then insurance is going to step in and they're going to pay, right? A lot of times it's easier to pay the bad guys than it is to deal with, with everything else.
Great point. And they know the town, city, schools, governments, they have the insurance. They don't have a large staff. They don't have a big investment, so you hit it right on the head.
Yeah, and
it's going to be easy to get in.
Yeah, and then the Washington D.C. Metro Police are in. They might be resolved now, but as of last week, they were in a ransomware situation, and the bad guys wanted $20 million. They posted 34 psych evals from 34 police officers. So just, regular people. And these guys, they kind of bluffed and didn't want to pay. So they said, oh, you don't want to pay? Well, here's how serious we are. Here's 34 psych evals for your cops. And then, it must have been like a non-negotiator or a junior person that was dealing with it. But they tried to kind of negotiate with the bad guys and they, said something like 20 million. We don't have that. The most we could do would be a couple 100,000. And then the bad guys came back and said, listen, you're a federal, backed company. You're worth this much money. You have this much. And now the ransom is 40 million. Right. So to kind of test what John's saying, they're smart. They're doing their homework. They know what they can ask for. They want to get paid. They don't want to not get paid. So they become very, very reasonable to be willing to release your data and give you the keys back to the kingdom.
And Bruce, to expand on that, and I was just working with somebody on this, it's worth way more to you, the stakeholder, the person that just lost the data, that is on the street. So, I mean, the value, the difference in the value of what they can get from you from what they can actually get money-wise from the data is it's huge.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And even trying to, to sell trade secrets and things like that, most companies would report that, right? So, if you go back to the old Coca-Cola, Pepsi, where somebody at Pepsi is contacting Coca-Cola with the secrets, and Coca-Cola just calls Pepsi and says, hey, you've got an insider, doing this stuff. So I think companies are more prone to do that. So how are they doing this? What are these leading causes of breaches? Well, we have your remote infiltration, and that's a big, big category, right? So you have poorly secured ports and services, unknown, ports, forgotten Citrix servers and things like that. You have weak password management, which, we'll kind of lump in to include, lack of multi-factor authentication on every single public facing interface. And then users, just not being wise to knowing that, if they were part of LinkedIn a couple of years ago, that their LinkedIn password is available, in clear text on the dark web. And if they're using the same password at the corporate network, which is kind of what happened to Colonial Pipeline, I don't think it was LinkedIn where the breach was, but the same thing. It was a password spray where the credentials that were compromised at one site were used to access another site, right? So once they have that, they're in, and often they're in authenticated, right? So they've, provided credentials, and that makes it very difficult to detect, right? So in this case, you have to almost assume the breach and be able to detect it and then respond to it. So you're watching for lateral movement, you're watching for, beaconing out to command and control sites and those types of things. We also see them getting in by exploiting software vulnerabilities. So you have bad patch management, misconfigured, cloud instances. So with Capital One and their 100 million records that were breached, the cloud was misconfigured, not the servers in the cloud, but the actual infrastructure, whether it was Azure, AWS, or what, that was misconfigured, allowing the bad guys to get in. And, with Equifax, it's a patch management issue. So Equifax, they had critical vulnerabilities on their public facing interfaces, whether they were on Fortinets or on Cisco ASAs, right? I mean, there's always critical vulnerabilities. They just need to be patched. And in the case of Equifax, they didn't patch it. The bad guys exploited it. And unfortunately, these exploits include remote code, where you now have control of the device as if you are sitting at the console logged into it. And now you can just move, laterally through the network. And then the biggest cause is the phishing, where users are, clicking bad links, downloading bad attachments. They're just not reporting when things are happening. They're, hitting, landing pages and typing their credentials in because they're being spoofed and being tricked, into this kind of stuff. I sat in an incident once where somebody had forwarded me something from an attorney, internal, a coworker, saying, "Hey, this doesn't look good. We're going to be in a lot of trouble with this." And so I opened the attachment. It took me to like a Dropbox site. My heart's pounding because, the boss is sending me this, this thing from this lawyer. And I type my credentials in to see the document, and then nothing happens. And so I called the boss and I was like, "Did you even read this?" And he's like, "No, I just saw it was from these lawyers and I forwarded it to you." So I assumed that he had read it. He didn't read it and sent it to me. I clicked it and assumed it was good. Shame on me. I typed my credentials. I spent the next hour resetting all of my credentials because I had just given my username and password to the bad guys. But I realized it, right? So even though I fell for it and it was from a trusted source and it was late at night, I personally discovered my problem and I fixed it. Sometimes users don't do that, right? They just type that in the page, and now what? Now they, I guess this is broken, and they just don't even worry about it. So, user awareness and the human, attack vector is very, very important to look at today. Okay?
It's the biggest. And just before we move on, we talked about cloud, two things on cloud misconfigurations, right? It's a huge vulnerability. People think, hey, if I put my information in the cloud is responsible. If you take down and you take information in, right, you own that information until deletion. I don't care where it is. So you're only as strong as your weakest cloud vendor from a security breach perspective. So something to really think about. Verizon, for the first time this year, cloud has taken over on-premise for more breaches. So you're going to find that to be a trend, and it's something you have to really be careful with.
All right. Agreed.
Oh,
okay.
Chris has a question that
I just saw Bruce. That.
Yeah, let's go for it. How safe are password managers is his question.
Okay, so I think that they're number one mandatory. You have to be using password managers. Corporate wise, LastPass works well. Even KeyPass on a local system, right? The point of a password manager is to allow you a safe, locked place where you can keep your passwords, and it will help you to generate secure passwords. So it stops us from using the same password on multiple sites, or, doing the old, swordfish 1, swordfish 2, swordfish exclamation point, like all that kind of stuff that we see. So yeah, password managers, I think, are a very, very important part of our lives today. I mean, I think we need to do that. We have logins to so many different sites. We need to keep track of them. We don't want to write them down, and we don't want to keep using the same passwords. That's the solution to that. So yeah, I would go with it. I use them on everything.
100%. They've been compromised, and there's a chance of that. But you like Bruce said, they're mandatory.
And then I did one other question just come in too.
Oh, I don't know. See real quick. No, I think we're good. The A's will hit at the end.
All right. So yeah. So so now this is the part of the presentation where now we're take a look at what this real impact is. Right. We understand that we're all targets. We understand that it's going to cost big bucks if it happens. We've talked about how they're going to get in. Right. We know that you're going to get ransomware. Now, when you get the ransomware, but you get the weaponization, they're going to leak their data to the dark web, or their data was leaked, right? So what does that actually mean, and what does that look like? So when we think of the internet as a whole, there's really 3 parts to it. There's the surface web, which is only 4% of it, right? And this is what we know as Google, Bing, Yahoo, eBay, Facebook, Wikipedia, Reddit, right? All that stuff, Amazon. They're all websites that are indexed, right? So are indexable, right? So we're able to go out and kind of comb them, learn them, index them, make them searchable so that we can find them. Then there's a part called the deep web. Okay. The deep web's 90% of the web. This is what John was talking about at the beginning, that was developed by the Navy as a way for secure communication. It is a series of routers that basically allows anonymous communications through this internet, and it's all websites that are not indexed. So they're either the coding in the website says, don't index me, or they're configured to not allow them to be indexed. So this is your government resources. Banks are using this, your hospitals and medical records, legal records, patent data, academia. That's all down in this deep web, just moving securely through essentially a series of VPNs, right? So as you're hopping from router to router, VPN to VPN, you don't know where the traffic is coming from. So when journalists need to communicate, when Edward Snowden is trying to talk to people, right, this is what they're doing because it becomes untraceable. Again, just like the internet stemming from the Department of Defense. Well, unfortunately, because of the way that works and the anonymous nature of it, we have a little piece of it, about 6%, that's called the dark web. And now these are Tor encrypted sites, so they end with .onion. Tor is the onion router. It's based on multiple layers, so that's why they call it the onion. Each layer is a router that you're going through. It's hiding your identity, so there's no way to know where packets are coming from. So if I was to access the deep web and just, or go to the dark web and you just surface at google.com, my browser comes up in over in France or in Italy. And if I go to, another site that has, some type of a location, or if I even do like, what's my IP address or an IP chicken or something like that, it comes back that I'm in Russia, or that I'm in China, or that I'm in, some other place other than where I am. So because of the nature of the anonymous communication and the untrackable communication, and then the introduction of cyber currency like your Bitcoin, Litecoin, and all that stuff, right, now we have hidden marketplaces, drug trafficking, illegal services, political protests, right? And this is the area of the internet where the bad guys are posting your information, right? Yep. Because you don't know where it is, you don't know where it's sitting. It could be on a server in New Zealand, it could be on a server in Switzerland. You have no idea where it's physically sitting because it's completely shielded by nature, by the design of the deep web, right? They're just now using this little piece of it for these bad, services. So how do you get there? It's actually pretty straightforward. You need to download Tor, which is a special browser. When you launch the browser, it basically auto configures itself for a proxy server is how you can think of it. So what it does is it attaches to a Tor exit node. just by the way that the browser is built. It's built on Firefox, Mozilla technology, right? So it's just really a skin on that. So once you have Tor installed, you can then just go out. This is just a Google search for hidden wiki, .onion URLs. And so, I don't know how clear it is, but it's like DuckDuckGo search engine, hidden wiki, Tor project archive. So, with enough searching of the surface web using Google and whatnot, and the installation of Tor, you can go out to these onion sites, and some of them are legit and whatnot. And then some of them, end up being, the places that we don't want to go, the places that the bad guys are using. Is it safe to go out to the dark web? It's probably not. But if you're aware and pay attention to what's going on, it can be safe, right? So if you're trying to frequent, the sites where they're, selling drugs and weapons and things like that, there's a good chance that anything that you click on is going to be some type of a malware coming down. But if you're just browsing like me from a security researcher perspective and just, trying to find these dump sites where, corporate data is being posted and whatnot, just being very careful not to click on things. And if you do click on something, making sure that you have the depth and defense approach where you're protecting your computer. You might even decide to spin it up in a VM so that if you do, make that one wrong click, that you can just blow the VM out and start over. Okay. So, are there any other questions, John? You want to add anything to this?
Yeah. I'll add something, and then we have a question. So here's the power. You could go to these websites anonymously. Nobody knows that you're there, and then you could buy stuff anonymously. Where it's hard is where there's a deliverable or where there's something physical, right? Then they still have to deal with the mail, or they have to deal with those aspects. Where it's not hard is when it's buying your information, when it's digital transaction. That's where this is a haven for these criminals, and it's so easy to do. Yeah, the question is actually near and dear to my heart. And so, would Office 365 be responsible for any loss of data if we have it there? The answer is no, you're responsible. So Microsoft is, they're very smart, and they know that data is at risk, and there's no way they're going to take that responsibility off of your shoulders. So no. So now it's about watch the watcher, watch Microsoft, watch your cloud users, have everything in one spot and keep an eye on it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's a key component. That's why we have Arctic Wolf here in this specific conversation, because when I respond to these breaches, I hear that we did not have visibility. Somebody got a password on the dark web. We're going to go deeper in all this stuff, but this is what happens. We didn't have visibility. They got in, they took our stuff. So we need to make sure we have complete visibility, and then we have help to know what we're looking at, all right? Because we're doing our jobs, and there's a lot going on. So that's where the end is going to be. But the answer to the 365 question is no, it's your responsibility. You own that data. If you collect the data, you own it until deletion. I don't care where it is.
Yeah. And it's to jump on what John's saying, it's important to have that broad visibility. You need to be able to see all of your assets across, your network, your hosts, your cloud, your humans, and then try to get that into, to one centralized, platform or tool or whatever to be able to look at it and decide when things are happening. So go ahead, John.
Just real quick, we're being hoodwinked. We're having these software people come in and saying, "Oh, put our software, put the agents out there, and you won't get ransomware." I'm telling you, this is what I deal with every day. That's not true. It's helpful. You need it. You need to layer it. But 0-day attacks come in every day. You've never seen it before. So how the heck do you say you're going to stop when you don't know what it is, right? So there's a lot to it. So what Bruce is saying is you need those tools in place, but tools get beat. It's radar detector. You name the software endpoint protection, I'll tell you, I've been on a breach. It got beat. So you have to have these tools, but then we have to put it in one place and watch them. All right, back to the dark web.
Yeah, no, and once credentials are involved, the tools just see it as a regular user. So, and that was when they asked for the Colonial Pipeline, they, one of the things that the bad guys do is they look at it as their security consultants. We've broken into your network and we've stolen your data, so you're going to have to pay us. But when you pay us, we're going to give you your data, your keys to undelete or to decrypt the data. We're going to go and delete the copy of the data that you have, and we're going to provide you with a security report as to how we were able to do what we did so that you can shore yourself up, right? So in the case, which is just so crazy to me that these guys have that they do this kind of stuff. But with Colonial Pipeline, it came down to them saying, okay, we're going to pay you, but how did you get our credentials? And the dark side said, oh, we bought them. So we don't even know where they came from. We just bought them for $1.49 on this site. So somebody stole the credentials, had them, put them for sale. These guys for $1.50 bought them and then used them to get $5 million in ransom from this U.S. pipeline company. So it's just, it's bizarre. All right. So now when you hear a company has been breached and their data is on the dark web, this is what it looks like. Okay. This is a large construction company out of California. They chose not to pay the ransom. This is the R-Evil cybercrime group, very, very active in the construction, engineering, architect firm throughout the United States. Here they dumped 700 gigs of data that they stole from this construction company. And it includes, and to protect the company, I've blanked out some stuff here. But as you can see, there are blueprints in here. This is a takeover folder. There are bids. There's tax information. There's employee information. There's human resource information, payroll information, project management stuff. I mean, 700 plus gigs of this company's data is now out there. Okay. Now this Mega NZ site is a notorious site for hosting this kind of information. You should probably in your organizations go through the steps of just blocking all traffic to this, right? There's no reason for anybody in our internal companies to be going and using this type of a file sharing solution. But the bad guys use it because Mega NZ refuses to work with authorities. So when the authorities come, first, they can't even find where these servers are sitting physically in the world. But as they try to communicate with them, Mega is just unresponsive. They just have no interest in preventing anybody from posting any kind of content that you want to post, right? So they're just as bad in this process. So Mega NZ is something that probably could be blocked in your companies. Okay, this is the Clop cybercrime group, right? So these guys, this is a company out of Nevada. You can see on the left side of the screen, 2,000 employees, 535 million in revenue, and then download 1, download 2, 3, right? So what these guys do is they start the initial threat, right? Which is what this is. Here's 3 passports of your employees, and then this security division, which has the employee account number and the social security number, along with the claimant name. So pretty much enough information for a little identity theft. They put that out there, and then 5 days, they release files part 1. Another 5 days, files part 2, right? And they continue these chunks of data until all of the data. This is another company that chose not to pay. And if you look at the top of the screen, you can see Clop here, and I've protected, I don't want to say the innocent here, but I've protected these companies. But you can see there's a couple of .edus in there, actually 4 of them. And one Canadian company as well, right? So, obviously Clop is very big into our, learning and higher ed type of stuff. But this, was an opportunistic attack for them. And then they went after it. Okay. And then finally, this is the Avedon group. Avedon allegedly is out of business. This is as of last week. They sent the 2,300 decryption keys to the press, saying they were out of business. And I haven't gone and looked to see if their site is down. They allegedly took the site down. On the left side of this, the page, you're looking at 121 gigs of police data. Down at the bottom, you have videos from jail cells, right? So this is the city's data, right? Just again, 121 gigs of police information alone. Okay. And I didn't block this out because this one was in the news. So everybody knows Dade City, Florida was breached. But look at all these 1.46 gig dumps that can just be downloaded, or the whole entire city zip, or I'm sorry, a city.zip at 116 megs, that can be downloaded. The other stuff blocked out, address, websites, emails, had real people's names. So I blocked that out. And then on the left side of the right picture, I blanked out all these other companies, but you can see there's a communications company, a chemical company, some type of a Russian company, it looks like, services SRL, right? So I just blocked out the first part of the name there on those. But these are major, criminal enterprises that are going through and doing this. So, and the reason that we know that they operate like enterprises, there was a group called PODAFT out of Switzerland who are security researchers, and they have put a great white paper out on a group called Silverfish. And what Silverfish is a group of hackers like Sandworm or like Indrik Spider or whatever, and they had attacked one of PODAFT's people, one of their clients, right? So these guys went in and throughout their forensics, they uncovered some information and they started scanning the hacker's site and ended up getting control over it, and were then able to spend a couple of months going through everything and documenting it. And the first thing they did was they went and notified, like 140 US businesses, including, I think it was like 17 3-letter government agencies, that these guys were in there. And the pictures of the tools that these bad guys are using are like, dashboards with 1,000 computers with a red light or a green light. And if it's a green light, that computer's on. And when they click on it, it just opens up a remote shell to that computer. And then the next pane opens up and they're able to run a bunch of commands, Mimkats or some type of an Empire PowerShell, or, to collect information or to move laterally. And it was shift based there. So they had, like in the trench hackers, and then they had bosses and managers, and they found that this specific crew was really working like an 8 to 8 shift, 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and not bothering us in the middle of the night, where other cybercrime outfits are like a 24/7. So it just kind of opened the eyes that whoa, like these guys are 200 person organizations that are basically punching a clock in the morning to attack our US businesses, and have these extravagant tool sets that are allowing them to automate everything that they need to do to get to the point, right, where they can get us and get our data and then encrypt our stuff, forcing us to pay. So it's overall just a horrible, situation.
Yeah. So, with that said, there are things we could do, right? We have to lock our doors. It doesn't mean that somebody can't break the window, but if it can, we're going to have people there to tackle them. That's really what this is all about, right? So some of the things that we recommend that you do is, first of all, I'm going to start with third parties and your cloud. Who are they? What information do they access? How important is that information? Right. And then we have to understand who they are, because we're only as strong as our weakest third party from that perspective. And I see that all the time. 365 is a great tool. I think it's awesome. We have to watch it, right? So there's where an Arctic Wolf would come in. Arctic Wolf is going to be the part where you get that visibility. So you take all your cloud, you take all your endpoint, you take your server, you take all this traffic, instead of having it in silos, we put it all together under one roof. And then we have a team of people be an extension of your team and watch it. And then when somebody logs in at a weird time from a weird place, we're going to know it. You're sleeping, but we're going to know, and Arctic Wolf's going to know. And that's where the power comes in, because time is everything, right? Time. So if they do break through the bars on the windows of our house, then we tackle them and we block them and we take them out. That's what this solution is about. It's about getting the visibility with a team of experts that are there with us and have it all in one place. Because when an incident happens, and there will be incidents, period. It's just so much going on right now. Things are going to happen, and you're trying to scramble to understand where the logs are, where can I find it, where I can trace it. It's all in one place with Arctic Wolf. And that is key to what we're doing here in trying to prevent ourselves from getting hurt. And two last things. If you haven't done an assessment in a while, I would do a NIST ransomware assessment. NIST has a specific assessment, about 130 controls just for ransomware. Do that for your organization. Understand where you compare and where you're weak. And then this is an important thing, right? It's really huge. So that NIST ransomware assessment is really big. And Kristen reminded me, and I didn't even look at my phone because I told her to text me. But for joining this webinar, will give you a dark web scan. So that's something that's complimentary. And what that's going to show you is, hey, in our domain, are our user credentials out there? Are our passwords out there? Are they in clear text? And if they are, from what breach, what date of the breach? So that will help us, because you'll be able to say, hey, Joe, your password is exposed in a breach last month. You got to change your password right now. And if you're using that password in any form in your personal life, you have to change it too. So we help people, right, in their personal lives, because it's got to be personal to them. And I'm going to give it to you, Bruce, to close. But my last thing on that was, I was in Rochester, and I've told this story. Bruce was part of it. But it just goes through me when I say we have to have people care. It's culture, people, process, technology. It's not IT with a firewall. It's not going to work. Just straight. It's got to be everybody. The risk is not in IT. IT holds very little risk, about 30% of risk in organizations in IT, yet everybody thinks IT's got the firewall. We're all set. No. Who owns the risk? Where is it? What are you doing about it? What metrics are in place? Right? So we're in a bar. We offered people $500 to give work credentials. We had a computer there to make sure that it was true, the credentials were accurate. And 3 people gave it to us, so we stopped. $1,500. We should have gave $50. You have to make them care, because if they don't care, you're even more trouble. Bruce?
No, yeah, 100%. You have to assume the breach, right? So at Arctic Wolf, that's our stance. The bad guys are getting in. It's not a tools problem, right? Tools are working. We see 120 billion a year, being, invested in tools. Bad guys are beating them, or they're coming in with 0 days that we don't even know about. So you have to assume the breach and then posture yourself to be able to detect and respond to it. Protect yourself across the entire MITRE framework. Look at the human element, the identity, the network, the cloud, the hosts. Watch and monitor all of it, and have an instant response plan, ready to go in the event that something happens. And just like you might do, an active shooter drill today, or a fire drill in your building or something like that. Run through a ransomware drill. Just be ready to go when you detect it and when you squash it, so that you do squash it and it doesn't, progress through the network.
100%. And that's part of that NIST assessment, right? These tabletops are big. Because it helps with the culture too. A tabletop is not expensive or long. It's 2 to 4 hours, right? And then a little bit of prep. So bring the stakeholders in the room. Let's go through a few scenarios, and let's see how we would respond and how our plan is. Because what I find is you usually change things, usually tweak things or change things. So it's great. And then people are like, wow, I didn't think of that, etc. So that's a great point and a great exercise. I want to thank you to Arctic Wolf. They're here. I have a long history with them, and I trust them. And you're dealing with the best resources in the world when you deal with a Bruce Cheney on the phone right here. So it's my pleasure having you help us, and
my
helping
pleasure.
people out there.
Yes, and my pleasure again. And good to get the band back together here. It's always fun.
Love it. And Kristen is the leader of the band. So what do we got, Kristen?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you both joining us. I'm just going to run through. I'm going to do the wheel of names so we can pick our winner. And reminder, the survey at the end, on that survey is where you can select that you want that dark web scan. So please just answer it's like 4 questions. Just answer that. Let us know. And I'll spin the wheel now. If you guys, I don't know if you can hear my sound of the wheel spinning. And the winner is Paul Manzione. I apologize if I mispronounced that, but we'll be in touch to get you that. And it looks like we just had, oh, thank you, Alan, for that. So we'll be in touch with you, Paul, very soon to get your address to ship that out to you. Thank you guys so much for joining, and please don't forget that survey at the end. Take care.
Thanks, Al. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Have a good summer. Be safe. Talk soon. You're great.